Hello everybody, thank you all very much for joining me on this new video. Today we're going to be having a look at how we can install vehicles, Peds, weapons, map files and a lot of other files such as textures to your FiveM server and how you can stream those. So to start off with, we're going to be going to our ZAP hosting account and we're going to be going over into our server. Now if you haven't yet got a server from ZAP hosting or haven't yet set it up, I really recommend getting one. You can do so using the link down below in the description. And I've also got a link in the description down below for a video tutorial on how you can get your ZAP hosting FiveM server all set up and configured so you can actually use it. So make sure you've done that before you continue into this video. Now obviously if you're using your own VPS or dedicated server rather than ZAP hosting, this tutorial will also work in exactly the same way, obviously, except the fact that you install it onto ZAP hosting. So you can still follow this tutorial even if you don't necessarily use ZAP hosting. And before you continue, you just want to make sure that your server is set to offline because we are going to be accessing the server via FTP. So just make sure that your server is offline. And what we're then going to do, as shown in the previous tutorial, we're going to go down over into our FTP browser page on the ZAP hosting web interface. And then you're going to connect to your server using the details which are shown above. Obviously, I'm not going to show them here because then you'll be able to get into my server. So make sure you do this using either FileZilla, which is what I'm going to be using, or your other favourite FTP clients. So what you're going to do now is you're going to go to the link in the description and you're going to download the assets.zip file that I have created for the purpose of this tutorial. And what that is it's a template to install vehicles, Peds, weapons, map files and textures and more to your server and make it so you're able to stream them as easily as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over towards that link. As you can see, I've got it over here in my browser now. And once you've gone into assets.zip, you can quite simply click the download button and then you'll be able to download it. So remember to save it in your FiveM ZAP folder or similar folder that you created on your local PC for your FiveM downloads. And we're just going to hit the save button and that's going to download for us right there. And once that's downloaded, please extract assets.zip using your favourite extraction tool. Now once that's done, you can go over into the assets folder. And as you can see, we've got a whole lot of files here, as well as a stream folder with a lot of categories of things that you can install into your game. So we're going to start off by just going over here and we're going to have a look at the resource.lua file. As you can see, it looks quite typically like just a standard resource.lua file. You've got your manifest version. I've added some comments here that make it slightly easier for you to find stuff. And then we've got all the files that are listed and all the data files that are listed over here. So what is important to note here is that we've got the vehicles.meta, car variations.meta, handling.meta and car calls.meta already defined. So if you want to add those, you don't have to define them yourself in the resource.lua file. So we're going to start off by looking at how we can install any vehicle into our FiveM server. So as you can see, I'm now downloading the Ford Police Interceptor 2012 model. And it is important to note that this vehicle is a non-ELS vehicle. So you are able to use ELS vehicles on your FiveM server if you really want to. To do that, you're either going to have to install the ELS file on the client side, or you're going to have to use the server-sided ELS resource, which I do believe is available on the FiveM forums, both of which have their flaws. So if you're able to, do make sure that you try and install non-ELS vehicles as a primary. My download is just finished, so I'm just going to extract this download and then we're going to go and have a look at how we can install this vehicle into our FiveM server. So as you can see, we now have the Ford Police Interceptor 2012 version 1.6 downloaded and ready to install. Now, unfortunately, lots of vehicle authors package their vehicles differently, and sometimes it is just plain confusing and not very intuitive at all. So I have done a much more in-depth tutorial on how you can install all these different formats of vehicle downloads into your game properly. Albeit it is for single player, the concepts are all the same, except obviously you're installing it into your FiveM. So there will be a card on the top right of the screen right now that you can click, and I've also got a link to the video in my description as well if you're interested. That'll show you how you can go through all the meta files properly, how you can identify which files from the download are actually important and which files to put in your game in which method. So I'm also going to briefly go over that here. As you can see, we've got the Police 3, YFT, YTD, YFT, YTD files. So obviously these are the model files that we want to install into our assets folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy all of these YFT, YTD, YFT, YTD files. Going to right click, copy those, and we're going to go over into our assets folder. And once we're in our assets folder, we're going to go over into stream, and we're currently installing emergency vehicles. So as you can see, I have added categories here to make it easier. We're going to add them into the emergency vehicles, and we're going to hit the paste button. As you can see, the police 3, YFT, YTD files are now all in the emergency vehicles folder, which means that they will be streamed when we add them obviously to the FiveM server. Let's go back to assets, and now obviously we need to think about all the other things that we need to install for this vehicle. So as you can see, it does come with a car variations line. So importantly, we are going to be opening this, and then we can quite simply copy and paste that into our assets car variations.meta file. So we're going to copy paste the car variations line into our assets folder, and then we're going to go over into car variations.meta, and you'll want to make sure that you add all the lines between the variation data tags over there. So let's copy paste that. There we go. That's perfectly fine. As you can see, that matches suitably. If I click this, then you can see it collapses correctly, and we still have the variation data tags over there suitably formatted. As you can see, I've got it set as police 3, which is correct. That's what we want for now. I'm going to save that, and then we can close that file. Now, obviously, this vehicle does come with a car variations.meta line, which is very useful. I think, personally, all vehicles should come with a car variations.meta line. Unfortunately, not all vehicles do. So what I have done is I have included a meta templates folder. This one is also included in my modding DLC pack file for single player. You might be familiar with that. If we go into there, we can see we've got a template car variations.meta file. And this one, simply you can use for most emergency services vehicles. It doesn't necessarily work with every single emergency services vehicle, so you might have to make a few tweaks to it. However, it works for the majority. So all you need to do then is copy paste this car variations.meta entry into your assets car variations.meta, and then change the model name to whatever model you're installing it to, and then it should hopefully work. Now, going back to our vehicle downloads, we're going to have a look if we can find the vehicles.meta file. I do believe it might be included over here, so you're going to have to sometimes do a bit of a nose around. And we do have indeed the vehicles.meta file over here. However, very important to note is that this vehicles.meta includes every single vehicle in the game, and that is not what we want, because we only want to install the vehicle that we're actually going to install, which is obviously the police 3 slot. So again, a very confusing thing. For the car variations.meta, they did it correctly because they only included the relevant line. Here, they've included the whole vehicles.meta file for whatever bizarre reason. So you need to make sure that you only copy paste the police 3 line. We're just going to have a look for that. Police 3, you can click Ctrl F on the keyboard and then just look for this. This will usually find the correct place. Here we go. So we here have the item for the police 3 model name. What we can quite simply do is we can click over there, have our cursor over there, and then we can scroll down to where that ends, which, as you can see by the red line, is right here. We're going to hold Shift, and then we're going to click there, and as you can see, that selects every single line in the relevant police 3 entry. We're going to copy this, and then we're going to go over towards our assets, vehicles.meta, and then you want to make sure that you copy paste this between the init data's tags. So copy paste it in between here. As you can see, that has just been pasted. This is all correct. We are installing the vehicle into the expected slot, which is police 3. If you're not doing that, then you might need to change these two lines to match the relevant slot. So say you were installing it into police 6, then you could simply change this to police 6 and this to police 6. Obviously, then you'd also have to change the car variations.meta to police 6, and you'd have to change these files to say police 6, police 6, police 6 high, and police 6 plus high. But that is not what we're doing at the moment. We're installing it into police 3, so let's just keep it at that for the moment. So make sure that if you are going to install it into a different slot, you only change the top two entries. You don't want to change the handling ID because that's just going to mess your handling up. You don't really want to change the game name necessarily either. You can keep that as whatever it is, as all that does is show which model you're driving in the game. So once that is all done, obviously we have now used the vehicles.meta. That was included with the vehicle download, so this should hopefully be the correct vehicles.meta entry. We can close this, and we can close this as well. And we can close this as well. So again, if the vehicle download does not come with a vehicles.meta entry, you can quite simply go over into your meta templates folder. You've got a template vehicles.meta here, and if it doesn't come with a vehicles.meta entry, it means it'll work with the default vehicles.meta entry for the slot it was intended for. So I'll just repeat that again. It'll work with the vehicles.meta entry for the slot it was intended for. So say we didn't have a vehicles.meta entry in this download. Obviously the intended slot is police 3. So we can quite simply do what pretty much we just did already. We can go into the template vehicles.meta. Obviously, again, this includes every single vehicle in the game for your convenience. So what we want to do, we want to search for police 3. And as you can see here, we have the default vehicles.meta entry for police 3. So you then completely copy and paste this as we did previously, and then you could copy paste it into your assets folder. Change the top 2 lines to match the slot you're installing it in if required. And then you'll have the proper vehicles.meta entry that should hopefully match with the vehicle download that you want to install. Again, that's obviously not what we're going to do now because it did come with a vehicles.meta entry. That is just what you want to do if it does not include a vehicles.meta entry. Now again, this is a fairly similar process as to the single player tutorial that I did. So if you need some more clarification on this, if this is not entirely clear, again, please have a look at the single player modding DLC Pack 5 installation tutorials for vehicles that I have done, and the links for those can of course also be found in the description. So now we've pretty much installed the vehicle successfully. Obviously if you need to, you can install a handling.meta file. However, this vehicle does not come with its own handling, so it simply uses the default police 3 handling as we saw in the vehicles.meta. So if you do need to add a handling.meta entry, again, copy and paste the relevant entry only, and then paste it in between the handling data tags. The same does apply for the carcols.meta. So if you open this, you can add any relevant carcols.meta entries over here as well. Now obviously that is something that we're not going to cover in here because all these files usually come with a vehicle download or visual mod download and pretty much speak for itself. So that is not really part of the installation process for vehicles. So now we have successfully installed a vehicle into our emergency vehicles slot. The next thing we are going to do is we're going to have a look at how we can install Peds into our Peds folder. So what you're obviously going to have to do is we're going to have to download a Ped. So as you can see, I have just downloaded the enhanced LSPD cop by Recram v4. This comes simply with some files. As you can see, it comes with all these files, YDD, YFT, YMT, YTD files, and we can quite simply select all these, right-click them, copy, and paste them over into our assets stream Peds folder, and paste them over there. As you can see, we quite simply drop those files into there. On this occasion, I also want to install the optional hat and new glasses props for this Ped, which are simply the Ped name followed by an _p plus the file extension. We'll copy-paste these as well. And we just put them in exactly the same place in the Peds folder, right over here. You can add as many Peds here as you want, provided they are in the default game. As you can see, SMY Cop 01 is in the game by default, so this will simply replace the SMY Cop 01 Ped. You can also add add-on Peds into your game. To do this, you're going to have to go into resource.lua, and then you're going to have to follow this link over to data files. We're just going to copy-paste this into our browser, and then here you can see all the files that you can include in the data file entry over here. It is going to be beyond the scope of this video on how to do this. However, you have got a Ped metadata file. This is the one you want to put in, and then you want to add a peds.meta entry for whatever add-on slot you're doing in. Obviously, that is not something we need to do now because we have done this in the default SMY Cop 01 slot so we don't have to worry about any of that. If you are interested in more information on this, it works in pretty much the same way as my single player tutorial once again. So I will leave a link in the description for how you can install add-on Peds, and there should also be a card in the top right now. The process is pretty much the same, obviously, except for the fact that you're doing it in an assets folder. So that is how you install Peds into your assets folder that replace default Ped slots. Quite simple, quite easy. We don't have to make any further meta changes. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how we can install weapons into the weapons folder and replace the default weapons that are in the game. So again, you're going to have to download some kind of weapon mod from any kind of modding site. I've already got one downloaded, so I'm just going to go over there. As you can see, I have downloaded the Real Weapons V1 mod over here. And we've got plenty of files that we can install, including this and a whole lot of others. So as you can see, these are really simple to install. These are simply pretty much the texture file that the game expects, the texture and model files. So all you need to do is copy and paste these. Copy. And then we're going to go over into Assets, Stream, Weapons, and we can quite simply paste them all into here without any bother at all. So that we can do that for every single weapon that we want. I'm just going to do a few as an example. So let's install this one. And then I also want to install, say, this one. There you go. You can quite simply copy paste these all into your weapons folder, and you can do this with as many weapons as you like. So a very straightforward process. You don't need to worry about any meta files. It all works pretty much as you'd expect. Just copy paste the files, the texture and model files, into the weapons folder in your stream. Very simple. So that doesn't really require much more explanation. Now, another thing that we are able to do is install map files into our asset/stream folder. So this is just a slight bit more complicated than the Peds and the vehicles and the weapons, as you also might need to make a client-sided file change. However, it's still quite easy to do. So we'll just have a quick look at how we can do this. So firstly, obviously, you're going to have to need a map that you want to install. One that you can use, for example, is the Modified Street Names with Postal Numbers map, which is available on the FiveM forums. I'll just use this as an example. As you can see, it's got a download. Now we're going to download this, and then we're going to go over and extract that download into our folder. So once that is downloaded, you can see we've got a number of files over here. So the ones you need are the YTDs. As you can see, we've got the YTD files for the map over here. So these ones can all be quite simply put into your map folder in the FiveM/stream. So we can simply put them in the map folder over here. Just copy paste them over there, and that will all do nicely. Now, something that is a bit unfortunate but is quite simple to solve is that you typically need a map zoom data.meta file for this map to work properly, because obviously the zoom level might be slightly different than the default map. However, this is a file you need to install in the client side. Now what you can do is you can quite simply go over into the map zoom data.meta and copy paste that. Now the location where you need to install this is as follows. Actually, it includes over here as well, so that's nice. So you need to go into your FiveM application data folder /citizen/common data UI map zoom data.meta. I'll just quickly do that for my own FiveM installation. So as you can see, I'm in my FiveM application data /citizen folder. We're going to go into common data UI, and then as you can see, you've got a map zoom data.meta here. You'll quite simply copy and paste the map zoom data from the download and paste that into here. And then when asked if you want to replace, you obviously want to replace the file in the destination. And then once that has been done, you've pretty much done that all successfully. Now you can see this one comes with its own FX server resource, map, stream, and obviously this all is pretty much the same as we have. However, you kind of want to put it in your assets folder because you have it all in one place. You won't have to add as many things into your FiveM server. So I recommend putting it in, as I have just shown you, quite simply into the map folder that we already have in our stream, in our assets folder. And that shows you how to install maps, custom map files into your FiveM server so they can be streamed to all the clients. Now, the last thing that really is important is obviously the world textures. So any world texture mods such as custom signs, custom billboards and stuff, They'll come with YTD, YFT files and the like of those. You can quite simply do exactly as we've done with the weapons. And just copy paste them all into here, and then those will all just work without any hassle as well. So they're the same installation process as the weapons, just copy paste all the texture files and the model files into the world textures folder, and then that'll all work as expected. Now, if for whatever reason you want to add any more categories, obviously I've added a few by default, but say you want to have sheriff vehicles, you can quite simply add more folders to do that. All the folders here are not required. You could, if you wanted to, you could put all the files that you want to install, you can just put them all into here. But the folders make it much easier for you to sort the files and categorize them, so it's easier for you to manage them. So say I want to have sheriff vehicles there, and then say I want to have road signs instead of the generic world textures, I can just add that and add all the road signs into here, etc. So be creative with your categories. You don't need to feel limited by what I have put in here for you. And if you want to use fewer categories, then that is entirely up to you. All that matters is that the files are located inside this stream folder and then in some folder in here. It doesn't matter which one. Now that is all done. We've pretty much done all this successfully. So just to recap, we've installed a vehicle, an emergency vehicle on this occasion. We've installed a map, we've installed a ped, and we've installed some weapons over here as well. So what we're going to do is we are now going to obviously put these files on our FiveM server with FileZilla. I'm just going to have to refresh this, because then otherwise it won't really show. As you can see, we've now got our assets folder in here, followed by stream and the like. So we're going to go over into our assets folder. And as you can see, we now have all the files that we can see here as well over on here. So what we need to do now is we need to navigate over to our server. Pretty much as I've done in the first tutorial. Let's go into your server, GTA 5 FiveM, server data, and we're going to go over into the resources. And then over here, we're going to have to copy paste the assets folder. I'm just going to go over into FiveM ZAP. You can see we can quite simply now drag and drop that over into here. And that is going to take a little while to complete, obviously, because we have installed quite a few files into there, so it just needs to upload them all onto the server. So that is now completed. So as you can see, we now have the assets folder here, and then we have all the files that we created. We have them here, stream, and then let's have a look in emergency vehicles. We've got all the police 3 files here, as expected. Everything is copied over correctly. Obviously, if you want to make any changes, you can do that. You obviously have to quite simply edit the files on the server, so that's not very difficult. I do recommend having some kind of mirror set up on your PC, as that makes it slightly easier to install stuff rather than editing it all on the server. And then once you've done installing stuff on your PC, you can simply drag and drop it over back into your server right over there. So that is all completed. Now the only thing that we need to remember to do, very important, is that we go over into our ZAP hosting, and we're going to go over into configs. And once we've gone over into configs, we need to edit the server.cfg if you haven't done so. And once the server.cfg is opened, you want to go over to the put your custom resource below this line bit, and you want to hit enter. Then we're just going to type start assets. So now obviously the assets folder that we had in our FileZilla resources will be started by the server. Importantly, you ideally have this around the top of your server.cfg. So right below this line will suit, because you want it to be one of the first things that is started when your server starts. So what we're going to do, we're going to hit save. You only need to do this once, so if you already added the start assets line to your server.cfg, you don't need to do it again. But do remember to do that, because otherwise obviously your things will not be on the server. And now once that is done, what we're quite simply going to do is we're going to disconnect FileZilla. There we go, we're no longer connected to our FiveM server, and what we can quite simply then do is hit the start button on our FiveM server on ZAP hosting. And now that that is all started, I'm quickly going to connect to the FiveM server that we've just installed all our stuff on, and we're just going to have a look if our things work. So I'm just going to direct connect into my server, which is the zaphosting.com Albo 1125 tutorial server. I'm going to hit the connect button over there, and then that is all going to connect. And then once we've loaded into our game, we're going to have a look to see if all the things that we installed have been put on the server successfully. Now, as you can see, we just loaded into our server. So the first thing we're going to have a quick look at is the map to see if that has changed. And as you can see, the map that we wanted to have in our game has installed successfully. So we've got all the postcodes and all the street names over here. So that is very nice indeed. Exactly as we expected it to be. Now, the other thing that we installed was the SMY Cop 01 ped. So you can use any resource or trainer or anything of the sort to just go over into that ped. In this instance, I am using the simple trainer, and that is available on GTA5mods.com. So I'm just going to spawn the SMY Cop 01 ped. We're going to see if that is different from the default one. As you can see, that is different than the default ped. It is the ped that we installed, and you can obviously randomize it slightly to get different gear. And as you can see, that actually looks very nice indeed. Let's keep it on this one for the moment. So the other thing that we did install was a custom pistol. So let's just go over into our pistol and just equip that, see if that has changed at all. As you can see, it's taking slightly longer for models and stuff like that to spawn. That is because we've obviously installed custom models to our server now, so we have to stream them to our client, which takes a little bit of extra time. As you can see, this is a different pistol than the pistol that is in the game by default, so that all works. Now, the final thing that I just want to test, obviously, is the Police 3 vehicle that we installed into our game. So let's spawn vehicle by model name and hit Police 3. Now, if the vehicle doesn't spawn the first time, just give it a few extra tries, because obviously, again, it has to be loaded from the server, so it might take a little bit of extra time. But as you can see, it looks very nice indeed. We've got all the custom vehicles that we wanted in the game. We've got them all installed, and we can turn on our lights very nicely there indeed. So that all looks perfectly fine. Obviously, if you want to install a custom carcols.meta file, then that is something you can indeed do as well. And with that being said, that is going to conclude this video on how you can install vehicles, peds, weapons, map mods, and more to your FiveM server. So if you haven't done so yet and you are going to do so, please remember to use the link down below in the description to create an account with ZAP hosting. Obviously, that is an affiliate link for myself, which would help me out tremendously if you use that link to sign up. So if you haven't done so yet, please do that if you'd like to support me. And with that being said, guys, thank you all very much for watching the video. If you did enjoy, please remember to hit a thumbs up, like button. And if you'd like to stay up to date with more videos and future tutorials, remember to subscribe to the channel as well. Any questions and comments, please leave them down below in the comment section. And I hope to see you all in the next video.